Hi, and welcome to the Jen White Show. I am back. The podcast is officially relaunched, and I couldn't be more excited about it. I have you all to thank for your wonderful comments and messages on all of my different social media platforms. Whether you follow me on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, I am so glad that you've requested this podcast to come back. And you're probably wondering, Jen, what am I going to hear on your podcast? Because your content is about your 40 something life. You said you were going to do this podcast alone. Like someone even commented, I didn't think people did that. Well, a lot of the episodes will be just me, but also a lot of them will be featuring you. So if you are interested in being on the podcast, send me an email and let's discuss because I want to hear your stories. The reason I decided to relaunch my podcast is because I finally figured out what I wanted it to be about. I showcase my life as a 40 something living in Chicago, living my best life, whether it's a night at home cooking a Trader Joe's meal, or if I'm out and about going to restaurants in Chicago or traveling around the world. And you all give me and you all send me the most incredible messages. Most of them are private messages, and you thank me for showcasing a life of a woman who's in her 40s without kids and doing it just unapologetically. Now, I didn't start creating social media thinking, oh, let me tell everyone I'm 40 something and see if they like it. I actually started creating content back 9 years ago. So, what would that be? 2016 and 17, something like that. I will have to go look at my original YouTube video. But I have been creating content for a very long time, and I have finally hit my stride, and I have found you all. And so this podcast is an extension of the content that you see on all of my other platforms. So my goal with the show is to expand upon what you see in a 90-second video or a 10-minute vlog on YouTube and to talk more in detail and expand on the topics and comments that you ask me quite frequently. And I would like to thank you for all of the ideas of what you'd like to hear on the podcast. The one that came up the most, which I feel like is going to be a theme in a lot of episodes. This isn't the only episode where I'm going to talk about this, but it's what is it like to be child free and in your 40s? And then there are a lot of sub questions to that. It's why did you decide not to have kids? Have you ever thought about having kids? What do you think life's going to be like in 10 years if you don't have kids? As you age, what's it going to be like? And all of those follow up questions, including have you thought about freezing your eggs? Oh, you froze your eggs. What was the process? What did you do? So that's what I want to dedicate this it's technically not my first episode, but the first episode of the relaunch to my story with kids, with not having kids and where I'm currently at. So let's talk about it. Before we get into it, this is my story and it is no one else's, which means I am not casting judgment or saying that you should do things the way I did. By no means. If you've watched any of my content, you know that is not what I am about. But I want to share more about my story and expand on the comments that I respond to on my different videos. So let's start with the question, why did you decide not to have kids? Question is multi-layered. So number one, I didn't choose not to have kids in a way that maybe you might think. When growing up as a kid and teenager and in my 20s and in my 30s, I thought, well, I'm going to grow up, get a job, meet the man of my dreams, get married, have kids, have a family, have grandkids, and then die. Like literally, that's what I thought. That's what I thought your life path was, or my life path could be. So I, like a lot of people, was dating in my 20s and my 30s, and I really thought I would meet the one. I thought I would meet the person that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with and start a family with. And at 43, that still hasn't happened. So a little bit of the backstory. I was dating in my 20s, dating in my 30s. When I was 37, I met someone and I thought I had fallen in love. Looking back, I don't really know what it was, but that's not what this episode is about. I met someone who also wanted to start a family and we were about the same age. And it was like, okay, well, let's date for a little while and then we'll do the whole like engage, marry, kids thing. Guess what? That didn't work out. And no shade to him, but thank goodness, because it just wasn't the right fit for me and probably him as well. But I was stuck with now being 39 years old. And I thought I was going to have kids with him. I really did. I thought finally at 37, I know I'm a little bit older, but people have kids older. And I finally did it. I finally found the person I'm going to have that family. And it didn't work out. And my mom had asked me, even when I had started dating him at like 37, hey, do you want to freeze your eggs? And I thought, I don't want to jinx it. Like, I'm in this relationship. We're talking about having kids. It's moving in that direction. Like, why would I jinx it by like freezing my eggs? And that's not what she meant. And I really wish I could have my mom here on the podcast. But unfortunately, I lost her a little over a year ago. Whew, still hard to talk about. Maybe that's not, no, I can't talk about that on podcast episode. I'm not ready yet. But she is the one who first put it in my head. And I thought, well, what does that really mean? Does it hurt? Like, what do I have to do? Am I too old? Am I too young? Like, I knew nothing about it. How much does it cost? All of these factors. And so I definitely ignored her when she brought up freezing my eggs. I'm like, no, mom, I don't want to jinx it. This is not what I wanted. Like, I'm going to have kids with this guy. Well, she definitely knew something I didn't. And I learned that later. She always knew. So I start the breakup process like, hey, I'm going to move to my parents' house. And then, we'll figure out what's going on from there because we were living together. And so I was living at my parents' house. It was October of 2020. So we are at least in Chicago, lockdown life for sure. And my mom and I started talking about it. And she's like, you know what, just look into it, see what your options are. And I said, okay. So I did some research. I talked to my doctor and she recommended a place. And I went in for the initial blood work because you have to get blood work done to see if your levels are like whatever they're measuring to see if you're a candidate for this. And I did that and I was a candidate. And then I went to my next appointment and I'll never forget because I felt like cattle. I was looking around in this room. It was so cold. It was like everyone was just a number. There was nothing personalized. And it felt awful and it didn't feel right. And I don't know why, but at that point, I had another appointment with my doctor for whatever reason. And I was like, hey, I've started the process, but something's really off about this place. I do not get a good feeling. And she said, you know what? You're not the first person to say that. Something has changed with them. Here's a smaller practice to go to. And I went there and I felt so much more comfortable. Now, at the time, I was working for a company where the insurance did not cover freezing eggs. And there's a lot of things you look into. Like, I learned that some insurance companies might cover it if you fertilize a certain percentage of the eggs that get retrieved. Well, that wasn't an option. And actually, thank goodness, because I wasn't ready to deal with the whole moral implications of having fertilized embryos in some freezer bank. I wasn't ready for that. I was already going through the breakup and trying to figure things out. So in a good way, that kind of took that off the plate for me. So I decided to move through the process with this place. And I was terrified. I was so nervous about like sticking myself with a needle because I'm not in the medical field. I've never done this before. I remember the first night. Now, I had a friend. I want to talk about that. So I had one friend that I knew who had just gotten her eggs frozen. And she lives in New York and we worked together and we're still really good friends. And I was like, tell me everything I need to know. And there was something she said to me that really stuck with me and I felt it. She said, when you're standing there by yourself at your kitchen sink with all of the needles and medications and gauze and syringes and everything just there, you're going to feel like Superwoman, like you're taking control of your life. And I was like, okay, like I believed her. I still believe her to this day. I trusted her and it was time. It was that night. I went through the doctor's appointments. I got all the ultrasounds, all the things that you need to do. And I stood there and I was like, I know I have to put a needle. What if I pass out? Like, what if I like freak out? Now I'm like passed out on the ground and I don't know. I didn't know anyone in my building at the time. I was like, what is going to happen? I had no one on speakerphone and I just looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, we're going to do this. And it felt It felt really good. She was right. I felt like superwoman. I felt like, you know what? I am in control of my life. And so I went through that process and I gave myself injections. It went on for about 2 weeks. Now, everyone's a little bit different. Where you do the injection, mine was in my stomach, and you do it at the same time. And then after a couple weeks, I got my eggs retrieved. They froze them. And I am reminded of that every year when I get the annual bill. So, what does that mean for me having kids and all of that? Because now I'm 43 and a half, as my little niece reminded me because her birthday is 2 days before mine. She's like, oh, it was her half birthday. And I'm like, it's really good for you. Actually, I don't mind aging. It's just really cute. With all of that said, I get asked, why did you choose not to have kids? Now, I chose not to settle in a relationship just to have kids. I know life is not perfect. I know that things happen. I have read and seen, and I have people that I know that have gone through some tragic stories, but I at least wanted to start out that way. I wanted to start out with a partner, someone who we both wanted to have kids. And I didn't need to be married. It could be my boyfriend, lifelong partner, whatever. I didn't need the marriage thing first, but I didn't feel right. Any of the relationships, well, I wasn't in that many, but the relationships that I was in, it never felt right. I didn't want it, so I chose not to settle in those. So now I have the eggs and I'm at this crossroads of, like, I mean, I guess I could have kids one day in a variety of ways, right? There's like surrogates. I think I know of people my age who've had kids, but I'm now at the point where it's like, do I really want kids? And things that go through my mind are, okay, I'm 43. So when the baby turns 20, I'm 63. Okay, that's not that old, but do I want to do it on my own? Like, do I want to go get a sperm donor? And for me personally, I don't. Could that change tomorrow? Sure. But I don't think it will. Could I adopt kids? Absolutely. Again, I don't want to start a family without having a partner. Now, if tonight when I go out with my best friend, I meet the man of my dreams and he is like, I absolutely want a family, it's still on the table for me. And I have options. Not that freezing your eggs is a insurance policy by any means, because it's still not guaranteed and I really don't have that many eggs frozen, but it's possible. And so, why did I decide not to have kids? I decided not to settle in relationships to have kids. And I hope that helps answer the question, because it's my answer and it's what is true to me. Let's talk about some comments and questions I get all the time about kids. What are you going to do when you get older? Who's going to take care of you? I think the obvious reason is, well, the obvious answer is there's no guarantee that your kids are going to take care of you when you get older. And some people don't even want to put that burden on their kids. That's not something that I am concerned about. Now, I am lucky enough where I have family. I have a brother, a sister, I have nieces, my dad, I have a couple cousins. It's not that I don't have family. I do. And if, I got sick tomorrow, they would take care of me. And, you know, I don't really think about that. I I don't know. I mean, maybe it's different for others, which I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is different, but it's just not something that's a big concern to me. I thought about this year. My dad went through some pretty big surgeries. He had his hip replaced, his shoulder replaced, and of course, we helped take care of him. And it made me think, okay, well, what would that look like if that's me in the future when I'm 70? Well, maybe I will have met a partner by then. Maybe it will be my nieces. Maybe it will be my brother or my sister, or maybe I could pay someone. Maybe I'm going to be so successful that I'll be able to pay someone to do that. So that's kind of what I think about as far as like getting older. I hope to have a partner one day. I really do. I really do. If it doesn't happen, it's okay. I have a very, very wide group of friends from all different aspects of my life. And being alone is not something that scares me. Maybe it should, it just doesn't. I don't concern myself with something that's like many, many, many years down the road. So let's talk about some of the challenges and joys of not having kids. Now, by no means is this something that I would never. We all have our own path. And I want to answer the challenges and the joys of not having kids because That's a question that you have asked me again and again and again. Multiple likes on this comment, all the things. Like this came up across on my YouTube, my Instagram, my TikTok. You all wanted to know what are the joys and what are the pains of not having them. So friendships change, and that's going to be a whole different podcast topic. But friendships change, especially when your friends get married and have kids and move out to the suburbs. It changes. So I would say a challenge of not having kids is that there's a part of life that I can't relate to with my friends that do have kids. Now, it's really because I'm on the other side of 40, it's not as challenging anymore. It was different in my 20s and 30s because that's when everyone was starting their families. Now, my friends are in their 40s, and if they have kids, if they started when they were in their mid 20s, they're like living their best lives right now. I do have to say, there are very few friends that I have that have young kids. Like if I look at my close friends, the people I talk to every day, most of them do not have kids. And if they do, it's my friends who are in their 50s or 60s and their kids are in college or well out of college. So it's not like having the small kids. Now, one of my good friends, her daughter is like 8-ish, and I don't see that friend as often. I didn't see her as often when she met her husband originally, and then especially when she had a kid. Our social lives were completely different. She has obligations with her child, and she has other friends who have kids, and they all hang out, and I'm so happy for them. And I don't feel like I'm missing out. It would be weird if I was going to the parties and that. Now, I was invited to like first birthday parties, and then it kind of like died down, which was fine. Not with this specific friend, but just like in general. So, it's, I guess, maybe a huge part of it is living in a big metro area, the fact that I have friends without kids. But if you're in your 40s, there's a good chance that there are many people who are becoming empty nesters who are your age, which opens up a whole new world of super fun people, super, super fun people to hang out with. So I guess if you are listening to this and you're in your 30s and you're going through this, my biggest piece of advice for you is to add on to your friend group. Find acquaintances, find friends who don't have kids, friends who can be like, yeah, I'll meet you for dinner tonight. You want to go next week? I'm in. Let's do it. Because like you still want to go out and have fun and live your best life. And, there's different ways around that. Now, what are the advantages to not having kids? Now, I never thought of it this way until you guys asked me. But when I look at it, an advantage is right now I am sitting here in my living room on a Friday afternoon filming a podcast. And the only noise we hear is my really loud HVAC system and possibly the construction going on outside. I woke up this morning and I had my coffee in bed. I went to my Pilates class. I came home. Well, on my walk home, I got an email from NBC5 Chicago, and they asked if I'd like to be interviewed today about the TikTok ban. So I said, yes, my house was clean. No one moved anything from the time I worked out until when I came home. I came home, I showered, I got ready. I had a reporter and a videographer in here. We filmed. It was great. I called my dad. We talked about it. And now I'm filming a podcast with you. And you know what? 3 hours, I will be leaving to go to dinner with my best friend. And we're going to have a fabulous night. And tomorrow, I don't have anything to do. There's nothing on my calendar. It's snowing outside right now in Chicago. And so if it's still snowing, actually, I love the snow, I might go for a walk. If it's decent outside, I might sign up for a last minute Pilates class, or I might just go shopping. And so the world is my oyster. So when I look at the positive, so you may be sitting there like, oh my gosh, I want kids. I want to have them. It's my goal. I want to meet someone and have them. That's amazing. You should keep that. If that's what you want, 1,000,000%. You should do everything in your power. But in the meantime, live your best life. Enjoy the fact that you can come home and no one has moved anything around your house. The fact that you can do, I don't know if this made it to all platforms, but like girl dinner where you just eat whatever you want. I do that a lot. I think I had the the white cheddar cheese, whatever, nacho dip from Trader Joe's. And what else did I have? I don't know. you get the point. You can piecemeal your dinners. You don't have to make a dinner for anyone else. You don't have to worry about anyone else. It's pretty darn great. Now, I do have not worries, but I think about my family and my friends. And like, it's not that I'm this cold hearted person who's not like, I don't have to worry about anyone else but myself. But for the regular day to day, I manage my own schedule. It's my time and I love it. Earlier, well, I guess we're in 2025. So in March of 2024, I decided to take myself to Paris. I'd never been, I don't speak the language, and I took myself on a trip to Paris because I could. And I didn't, the only thing I had to worry about was taking the time off of work, and I was all set. And I had the most incredible, incredible time. And I can't stop thinking about it. Like I'm getting the itch to go back. March is obviously in the near future. And I'm like, you know what? Should I do like a Paris, London, I don't know, Dublin trip coming up? Like I have that freedom to do that. So my best advice is if you are single, if you don't have kids, or maybe you are married and you don't have kids and maybe you're trying and I have friends who have been in that position and I can empathize with how like awful and strenuous and just mentally and physically exhausting that can be. But if you're looking for the silver lining, it's you're in control of your own time and calendar and go choose things every day that make you happy. I have so much more I can talk about, and I'm very excited to have guests who will share their stories about being child free or if they are empty nesters. I want to have them on the podcast. I want you all to hear the incredible stories of women, maybe one day men, but for right now, we're going to stick with women and their stories about having kids, not having kids, getting married, not getting married. So you can see the different paths. Like you can carve your own path in life. And I think the most important thing is to choose yourself and choose happiness every day. Thank you for listening. I'm excited to come back with another episode and I cannot wait.